Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Wait, oh, I was muted. Hi everyone, sorry about that. I was apparently on mute the whole time I was just talking, so if you couldn't hear anything, that's why. Good afternoon and welcome to the Fisdap Tips and Tricks webinar. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that due to the volume of attendees, all lines have been muted. If you have any questions, please send them through the chat and we will have some time to address them at the end of the webinar. Today's tips and tricks topic is scheduling shifts. Our host is Tashi Wangmo, who is the Fisdap Technical Product Manager and has been with Fisdap since 2016. So without further delay, I'll pass it off to you, Tashi.
Hi everyone. Hope you guys can hear me. So I will be going over the scheduler today. We'll be talking about a couple different things specifically related to the scheduler, looking at the settings. We'll look at setting up sites and then just creating shifts. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to write them down below in the questions, and we do have about 5 minutes at the end of our call to go over them and answer any that you guys have. So that being said, I'm logged into Fisdap right now. I have instructor access, and as you can see, I'm on my Fisdap dashboard page. So let's start with the first thing that would be the settings. So the settings for the scheduler, we'll go to the account tab. We'll wait for it to load. We'll scroll down to program settings, and then we'll click on scheduler. And the reason I wanted to go over settings for the scheduler is because these settings, specifically the settings for the shifts, apply to all the shifts that haven't been created. So these are the generic settings that would apply to your future shifts. And so I wanted to show you where they were available, specifically with the signage of when a shift is available. So at the top here, we have student permissions. As a program, you can decide if students can or cannot see each other's schedule. So that's for the can or cannot. You can make those changes, whether you want students to have the ability to create their own shifts and whether you want students to have the ability to sign up for shifts. So these settings up here will apply immediately to existing shifts and future shifts when you turn them on and off at the top. Right next here is student notifications, and this is something you can choose to turn on and off, whether to get students sent an email notification anytime they're added or removed for a shift. So depending on your program, you can again choose to turn it on and off. Sites will come back to here just to decide what locations are available, which programs, whether fire departments, hospitals, clinics you guys are working with. So we'll come back to here because this is a little bit more nuanced. Requirements. So we're not going to go over compliance in our specific webinar because it's a short 25-minute run through, but we'll definitely come back for another tips and tricks on requirements. But there's another link here to get to that page. Now the default settings, and as you can see from the title, it says default because these changes or these settings that you choose here will apply to all your future shifts that you create. These will not apply to any of your existing shifts that are populated in your scheduler. But that being said, let's say you're setting up your program and for your future shifts, you can choose whether you want your students to be able to drop shifts cover or swap, and if so, that is the settings that you want to apply, whether you want to do it with permission or without. With permission option will let students request a drop, and then there will be a notification on the instructor side and where you can choose to accept that drop request or reject that. You can also choose when the shifts become available and when it stops. So these are the default settings that will populate when you go create a shift. That being said, let's go to sites. When you click on manage here, and you will say, okay, it's fine. Over here, this will populate all existing active sites. Now, if you're a brand new program, you will have the name of your program as a lab site listed. If you have existing shifts, it will let you know whether it's an ambulance, which would be with the truck, so ambulance or any kind of field site, or a hospital site. So those are the symbols. An existing one, so let's look at our Fisdap demonstration site. So I'll go ahead and hit edit. For any existing site that you have in your program, you will be able to see what the address is, whether you want it to be an active site. An active site would be a site that is visible in your scheduler as a location. It is visible when you run reports on sites. So pretty much if you want that site to exist in the user side for your students, for your other educators, that's making sure that it's active. You can turn on departments. So if it's a hospital site, it will let you see different departments in the hospital. So you could be working with the clinical coordinator, specifically with ICU, ER, or PEDS. So whichever sites or the basis for that site or departments you would like to have turned on, you can make those active here. Preceptors, you can also have preceptors associated with that specific site and add it yourself. You can also see, you will notice this list will populate with names once students start documenting data. So if you guys are also utilizing the skills tracker, when a student documents a preceptor name for that specific site, their names populate here. And you'll be able to manage that by merging duplicate names, just having a quick look, cleaning up the ones that you're not utilizing by making them inactive. Any additional stuff for that site, any information, etc., will be the different tabs that we see here. So this is for an existing site that I have in my program. So to add a site, you will just be clicking on this Add Site button. It will populate or default to the state that your program exists in. So in the case of someone in California, all California states show up. For some reason, I exist in Florida at the moment. So Florida states sites that are active in the system are showing up. So one thing to keep in mind is you might think, oh, there's a lot of stuff here. I don't know where I'll find. You can narrow it down by city. So you can have it alphabetized. You can narrow it down specifically just looking for field, or if you know the name of the program, or I guess in this case, ambulance, fire department you're looking for, you'll be able to search for it. So let's say I want to do anything with Miami. So I could go in, click on it, and then I just hit add field site. So usually when you're looking for information, you will be able to see some information about it. Yep, Ernie is the point person at this fire department. Great. That's the one I'm looking for. So I just hit add sites. Now, if you do not see the site you're looking for, and that would be by looking for the acronyms, maybe a shorter version of that name, a longer version. I looked everywhere and I cannot find Miami Tashi ambulance. So if you ever needed to have that as a site for you guys, you can definitely add it from scratch. When you add a new site, that site will be available to you, of course, but then also in the future, if anybody else would like to utilize Miami Tashi ambulance, they will see the name. So that would be adding sites, checking on existing sites, and then adding a brand new site from scratch. And when you add a brand new site, you can choose which type of site it is, the name, some information, the contact point person, etc. So I'll go ahead and delete that because I do not need a Miami Tashi ambulance. Or maybe in the future if I did have that. But at the moment, no ambulances, no Miami for me. So going back to the sites page, once you're in your page, you will notice, as I said, anything that's active, right, you will hear in this list will have a check mark. So again, you might have sites that you're no longer working with, or your discussions with them have been paused, or you're not going to utilize them for a year. That's okay. You make it inactive, but it still exists in your program. The data documented for that specific site will not get erased. It will always stay in your shifts. So if you needed to run reports or anything, that's still available. But on the list of the scheduler side, only the active sites will be visible. I don't know if you guys have any questions about shared network, but that is definitely something we will again revisit on extra features that come with the scheduler, such as compliance, shared sites, etc. For now, we'll just look at setting it up. So now that I'm happy with my sites, I looked at my settings and they all look good. Coming back to the account page, you can also go to the sites page directly from the program settings, and same with requirements. So I'm happy with all of that. I'm going to go to my shift tab and then the schedule link. And when I'm in the schedule, so if you come in and you ever see lines, it just means it's an overview format. The overview format was set to have an easy view at a glance to see what kind of shifts are available for your program. So the blue ones are always field in Fisdap, green are clinical, and yellow lab. So as you can see, my program is heavy on field this month, but if it had any clinicals or lab, I would have seen some yellow and some green. I personally always prefer details just so that I know exactly what's going on, who's creating what shift where, so I can have a quick look to see what students have been associated or not with a shift. You can change the view from month, week, day, or list. And in this case, I've left it at month because that's, again, what I prefer. So let's go and create a shift. So if you had turned on the ability for students to create a shift on their end, these three buttons up top, one of those, depending on which ones were turned on, will be visible. So in this case, let's just go ahead and practice creating a shift. I'll choose clinical, so we have some diversity with the colors on the screen. You go in, you choose your site. So any active clinical site that I have, it will be visible here. I choose Hennepin County, it's downtown in Minneapolis, and my students are going to the ER. So I've just chosen that. You put in the start date, so when is your shift starting, and then the duration. So I've discussed with their coordinator, 9 a.m., 12-hour shifts. So I input that. I've also discussed how many students can go, and they said they can take one student at a time. Oh, that's good. So that will be all listed. If for whatever reason, if you guys are making a shift and you want to have a custom name, like for example, in this case, this is only available, and this is a reminder for me, this is a reminder for my students. I want to make this shift only for my paramedics, and I want that to be very obvious in my calendar. So I could give it a custom name, and I can call it paramedic night. So that way I know it's only for my night students and paramedic at a glance, or any other educator can also see that just in the title. Now I go in and I've spoken to Hennepin County. They said every Monday and Wednesday. So I go ahead and choose Monday and Wednesday. I could choose it manually, but we also have the option of repeating patterns. The system is smart enough to recognize some of the basic patterns. So if you're doing specific dates, specific day of the week, it will duplicate that. I can do it every 1 day, every 1 week, and I can also choose for when that ends. So I will end it at the end of September. So that all looks great. And then once I'm happy with how it looks, but I realized, oh, the second is most probably students taking a long weekend, so they don't want anyone in there, or maybe they do want people to come up because it might be a rowdier weekend. I choose Sunday. So even in that pattern of shifts, I can play around and check uncheck days, which might not work with my automatic populated series. So I might have an extra day. So once all that is done, the next page is assign or sign up. So if you have any preceptors, you know for a fact, you can have them associated. Any instructors, so I would like to be associated or informed about the shift series I'm creating. I want to be listed as the instructor, so the students can reach out to me if there are any questions. When you create a shift, for the sign up on the students, you have two options. You can also let students sign up depending on when they are available. You can also yourselves as educators assign them to a shift. So if I go to assign and sign, so I know, okay, maybe a student has to be going to all of them, I can manually input them and assign those shifts while I create them. One thing to keep in mind though is when you're assigning a student to a shift, when you're creating it, you're assigning them to every shift in that series. Pam is not available to go to every shift I've created every Monday, Wednesday, so that might not be a good idea. So I can always come back to assigning once the shifts are created. But if you know for a fact that that one student has to go, and that could be a great example for lab shifts. Everyone in the class should be going to a lab class, right? So you could assign those 10 students right there and then, and everyone knows, hey, next 16 shifts, Monday and Wednesday is a lab date, and we have to be available 9 a.m. So that would be the assign sign up feature. Now, if you're letting students sign up, you could say, I would like my students to sign up. Great. When? So I would like them to sign up from today. It could be a specific date. You can make a monthly date or a rolling date. So I would like the shift to be available until the 1st of August. Or it's a rolling date. I would like it to be available for the shift one day before each shift starts. And this gives my students more time to sign up for shifts. Now I could go further because I called it paramedic. I only want this to be available to my paramedics. I can say only students with the cert level paramedic can see these shifts. So automatically the shift will vanish from the view of EMTs, AEMTs, because the shift is only available to my paramedic students. You can also do that for your student groups. And if you have any student groups in your program, you can choose for this to be visible to that specific group. So now students in my testing student group that are paramedics will be able to see this shift. You can create multiple sign-up windows. Maybe you want your paramedics to have an advantage over your EMTs, or maybe you have an accelerated EMT class that you want to have an advantage over your regular scheduled EMT class. Whatever the case is, you can choose for multiple sign-up windows to be available and different people to have different access. If you did have cover drop swap, and maybe you again only want to turn on this feature for this one shift series, you can do. So you can say, I would like my students to be able to drop a shift with or without permission. So I will leave that with. And then the last page, notes and notifications. What notes would you like your students to see when they go to sign up for a shift? So I would like them to know, please, or so I can say, bring ID, photo ID. So the front desk people know that they're actual students / your student ID. Or I can say photo ID or you /. So that way they know they're affiliated with your program. You know, I don't know, maybe it's the summer, wear shoes, closed-toed shoes, etc. Or park in the, it could be more variety of things like park in a specific place, call XYZ, or in this case, I could say call Haley, the clinical coordinator at Tashi's hospital. So whatever notes you would like students to have about that specific site, you can input that here. The email list would be a great place to put in the email addresses of people who would like to be informed about the shift series, but do not have a Fisdap account. This will generate an email for every change in the series. So I would use it depending on who would like to be informed, because there are a couple of different options too. So I'm happy with my shift details, my signage, who's allowed to sign up for the shifts and when it's available, and then finally my notes. I say create 16 shifts. So the robot keeps working on it, goes boop, 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 and my shifts are in. So as you can see, the green ones, to see some information, let's click on one. So it's a paramedic night, so I know as an instructor, this is the custom name I gave my shift series. It's a 12-hour series. I'm the instructor. The students have to bring a photo ID, wear closed-toed shoes. It is drop available, so as a student I know that's okay. And it's slot sign up available for paramedics in the testing program. It's slightly different. And then for everyone else, it ends on the 14th, so a week before that shift starts. I can always check the history, and this will be available for every shift. Who created it, who signed up for it, what time, what date. That all looks good. I could, as I said, if I know for a fact a student has to go to that shift, I can assign them there and then. So I know Pam should be going to the shift, and she's mentioned that to me before. So before someone else signs up for it, I'm going to give her that chance. Let's see, if we wanted to delete a shift, that's an option, and edit. And for both these options, you don't have to do make a change, one change at a time. You can choose to edit all the shifts that are in that series that you created from the shift you chose. So if I selected August 14th, any shift from August 14th onwards is editable for me as an instructor, and I can do it either for that one shift or all the shifts in that series. So as you can see, the 12th is not selected, but I chose 14 onwards, and then I can choose to say what I would like to edit. The same goes for any deletions. If I went to delete, it'll always say, hey, this shift is part of a series. If you would like to make any edits, you can do it one-off, or you could do it to every shift that exists in that specific series from that date onwards. So I just want to delete this one shift. I'll say delete. And so do that. You know, that shift on that 14th is done. If you ever go ahead and try to delete a shift with a student associated, it will let you do that, but it will always give you a warning and say, this student will be dropped. So I'll say, that's fine, and you drop the shift. Okay, at the top here, we'll have a filter bar. Once the shifts are in the system, the filter bar is a great way for you to narrow down what is visible. So I could go and say, I would only like to see the shifts that are only clinical. So that way it'll declutter my schedule and let me see exactly what I would like to see. So if I just said clinical sites, only clinical sites show up. You could narrow it down by a base. You can do the same for cert levels, student groups, a specific name of a student. You can choose to see chosen shifts versus available shifts. It's a very, very helpful feature to really look for something or narrow down the view that you would like instead of seeing everything. And that would be a helpful tool, especially with bigger programs with multiple shifts happening, multiple student groups, etc. Or even for a smaller program, if you just want to clean up your view by a specific shift type or person that's in the program. But one thing to keep in mind is once you have a filter, it will remember that. So even if I logged out and logged in, the system remembers that. So I would suggest saying reset. And once you reset your filters, hit go, and then it will go back to everything the way it was. So it'll show you everything. So for whatever reason, if a student lets you know, or if you think, oh, wow, I'm missing something, I would always suggest checking the filter bar real quick to see it looks good, and just hit the reset filter bar and hit go. And if still you see nothing and that's an issue, then feel free to call our customer instructor hotline, and we'll make sure to help you walk through and see what's going on. But the filter bar sometimes is the culprit because it remembers your previous filters, and then it might limit what you are seeing on your screen. So that's all with the setting up, the filtering, creating shifts on your end. We have a couple different features here. You or your students can choose to subscribe to the scheduler. I think it might not be the best thing as in clinical or a field or a lab coordinator, because that would be a lot of shifts that you would be pulling. But for students, it's a great way for them to know which shifts they're going to, which ones they've signed up for, and hopefully that will minimize anybody ever saying, I did not know. So they can do it for Google, for an iCal, Yahoo, or Outlook, and they can generate that link to have the scheduler show up on that end. You can always pull a PDF of the calendar. Yeah, specifically if you want to see what it's like and want to print it out for whatever reason, you can pull a PDF. You can do a one-time email. So instead of you having to pull a PDF and then email out to another coordinator, your colleague, you can set up one-time email directly to Fisdap. And you can also set up recurring emails. These are it's a really helpful feature to make sure all the coordinators, the other programs that need to be informed about your schedule, who's showing up when, and have that preset so you don't have to send those emails out every week, every month. The one thing to keep in mind is whatever filters you choose at the time of setting up your recurring email, those filters will be remembered by the Fisdap robot, and when it pushes out those emails, it will only choose those filters. So if I was sending out all my emails, specifically shifts to, let's say, ambulance, Miami-Dade, Tashi ambulance, which we were discussing about before, then I could choose my filters saying showing shifts available to any student, chosen by any student, and display would be location Miami-Dade Tashi ambulance. And then the system, when it pushes out those emails, it will always remember that location. So that would be an option. You can put in your recipients, your message. You can put yourself as a recipient just to make sure everyone's on the same page. You can choose all that scheduling and then hit save, and that recurring feature will be available under your settings here, recurring, and have that saved. So the robot would automatically do that part, and hopefully it'll be less tedious for you to send out those schedules every week, every month. We'll talk, as I said, compliance, about another tips and tricks, because it's a little bit more nuanced. Scheduler here, this has the same settings page, and so instead of going to the account tab, any shift requests, if they were dropping or covering shifts, recurring, subscriptions. So there's a quick way to get to the settings page. So that should encompass all about getting started with the scheduler. Oh, so we do have one question. Let me have a quick look. Technology. If you already have made shifts, can you go back and allow a student? Okay, so if you have already made shifts, can you go back and allow students in a group to schedule? I'm going to take that as a student group. You mean? So yes, you can, if you just want to add or have the settings of the shift available only to a student group, you can always definitely go and edit that shift, and in the sign up section of that shift, you can make that shift available to a specific student group or a specific or multiple specific student groups or certs. So you can edit and go back and make those changes, and once you do save those, it will apply, and then it will only be available to that student group or that specific cert level. If that was your question, if I answered completely off and this was not at all what that question meant, please feel free to reach out, and I will clarify on that. So if not, then I think that should let me wrap this up, and I will hand it over to Haley. Let me make her the presenter. So thank you for your time, guys.
All right, thank you everyone, and thank you to Tashi. We hope you are able to join us for the next couple of tips and tricks webinars coming up on August 21st and September 4th. To stay up to date on upcoming webinars or to see recordings of previous webinars, you can visit go.fisdap.net tips and tricks, and that's and spelled out A-N-D. There will be a quick survey after the webinar, so please be sure to let us know your thoughts on today's webinar and if you have any suggestions for future topics. If you have any additional questions that weren't addressed today, please feel free to submit them there. Thank you, and we hope to see you next time.